Thank you again to the Coweta Chamber of Commerce and the Times-Herald for hosting tonight's forum. And thank you to our candidates for being here tonight. From left to right are Jimmy Callaway, Randolph Collins, Doug Jordan, and Lenn Wood, all of whom are on the ballot in the June 18th special election for Coweta County Sheriff. We look forward to hearing from each one of you tonight, and thank you for being here. I'm Dean Jackson. I'll serve as moderator for the forum. I'm joined by Clay Neely and Winston Skinner of the Times-Herald, and Cynthia Bennett and Candace Boothby of the Coweta Chamber of Commerce. Tonight's forum and candidate questionnaires are submitted by each one of our candidates, by the way, can be found on the timesherald.com and NoonanCowetaChamber.org websites, among other platforms, and will remain up throughout the dates of the election. Thanks again, by the way, to the Central Educational Center, Mike Britt, and our CEC student production crew for tonight's studio setting as well. Gentlemen, the election that you all face on June 18th, it's a special election. As such, there's no party primary and the race is nonpartisan. Early voting for this race begins May 28th and runs through June 14th, with one Saturday of early voting on June 8th. Voter registration deadline for this election is May 20th. The race for sheriff is the only issue on the June 18th ballot. The candidate among you who secures 50% plus one of the vote will fill the unexpired term, or if no candidate wins 50%, then the top two vote getters will face each other in a runoff, which I understand would be scheduled for July 16th. So, some ground rules for our forum tonight. Our format will be similar to that we've used in the past. Each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute opening and a 2-minute closing statement. You will have, in between, up to 1 minute to respond to a series of questions that we'll pose to each one of you. After the last candidate gives his answer to a question in that, a 30-second rebuttal would be allowed if any of you elect to claim that. I would caution all of our candidates to follow the time limitations closely. Mr. Neely is going to be our timekeeper, and we'll keep you apprised of where you are as you answer your question, and we will signal you when you have about 10 seconds remaining and call time if necessary. And of course, candidates, please finish your sentence when your time is up, but we'll try to keep our forum moving along. We're also going to stagger our questions so that none of you will be the first or the last to answer every time. Mr. Callaway is going to be the first of our candidates to make his 2-minute opening statement very soon, and then followed by Mr. Collins and so forth. And that means when we get on to our questions, Mr. Collins, you'd be the first one to answer that question, on to Mr. Jordan and Mr. Wood throughout the night. And of course, the questions that will be asked will be applicable to all candidates. In fact, that's the one thing I actually do want to reiterate. Our forum tonight is intended to give voters an opportunity to hear your views as candidates. Questions were submitted by members of the Chamber of Commerce and the Times-Herald. Both the Chamber and Times-Herald are neutral to all the candidates we have here tonight, and this forum will remain neutral towards you as candidates. And we had also asked that our guests in the audience respect that neutrality as well, and the dignity of this occasion in general, by refraining from any demonstration for or against any candidate. Please hold your applause, refrain from any show of support or opposition during the forum, even for issues that you feel very strongly about. So, with that, let's begin our forum with our 2-minute opening statements. Each of you should use some portion of your statement to tell us about yourself personally and professionally, and tell us why you have chosen to seek the office of Coweta County Sheriff. Mr. Callaway, I ask you to begin, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. My name is James Callaway. I go by Jimmy. I'm a Coweta resident. I've been living here for over a decade. My family and I, we love it here. My wife and I, we moved out here from Conyers, Georgia. I was a deputy sheriff in Rockdale County from '96 until 2006, and then I left there and went to the city of Morrow, where I became a patrolman at the city of Morrow. I worked my way through the ranks all the way up to the chief of police. I'm the chief of police right now. During my time at the city of Morrow, I also commanded the Sheriff's Vice Task Force in a county of over 300,000. We did a lot of raids in the city of Atlanta, South Atlanta, College Park, East Point. I'm uniquely situated with my experience, I believe, to see where we're going with as a county and what the law enforcement needs are going to be for this county for the future. I do possess an associate's degree in criminal justice, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I have advanced training from the University of Louisville. I'm a graduate of the Southern Police Institute. I'm also a graduate of Mercer University Public Safety Leadership Institute. I'm also the elected president of the Georgia Gang Investigators Association. That association, we train thousands of police officers. We have over 1,500 members currently. We go all over the state. We've taught 20 classes so far this year, not only to local officers, but to state officers, federal agents, as well as prosecutors. I had the ability to come down to Coweta in 2015 to help teach a gang class here in Coweta County. I have a passion for enforcement of certain levels of crimes to make our community safer. And when you look at the overall totality of criminality existing in the Metro Atlanta area, the main drivers are gang crime. And we're starting to see that creep in slowly here in the county, and I'm uniquely situated to get ahead of that. I'm currently working with the state of Georgia, with the Gang Task Force, with Attorney General Chris Carr. I'll be next week with a meeting with him and Brian Kemp. But again, my name is James Callaway, and I humbly come before you tonight and ask for your vote.
Thank you, sir. Your opening statement.
I'm Randolph Collins. I'm glad to be here. Thank you all for coming. Really do. It means a lot to us. Again, my name is Randolph Collins. I'm born and raised here in Newnan. My wife and I, we're raising our children here. This is my home. I attended Coweta County schools. After college, I started at Newnan Police Department as a patrolman. Had the opportunity. I left the city of Newnan to be a state trooper. I spent 20 years with the Georgia State Patrol. I had a short tenure with the United States Secret Service. I came home, ended up meeting my wife. We have two small children, 6 and 8, that attend Coweta County schools. I was lucky enough in 2007, I was elected as commissioner of Coweta County, the 3rd District. Again, this is my home. This is my children's home. It has been my lifelong goal to be elected sheriff. I hope to earn every person's vote in this room to have that opportunity. I make a promise to everyone here to do the best I can for this county, for this department. Coweta County has some great, outstanding deputies. I plan to continue that, give them every opportunity to grow. I want the best for this county. I think everybody in this room who took the time to come here and be here to hear us has that same desire. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, your opening statement.
Jordan. Again, I'm glad to be here. I've lived in Coweta County over 36 years. We've raised 2 boys in this county. I started my career in 1975, City of Hayesville Police. Married in '82. I left law enforcement. I wanted my wife to stay home and raise my kids. We're all policemen here. We know the salaries aren't that high. I wanted to raise my kids right and my wife to stay home. So I had a career at Delta Airlines. I also worked in Coweta County as a home builder. I feel like I helped Coweta grow. I've built probably 60, 70 homes. Retired from Delta Airlines and got back into law enforcement. I found myself as investigator and then chief of police. Along with Mr. Collins and Mr. Wood, we have police down here. So we feel that this is our county. I didn't realize how bad it's growing here until I got back into policing. But I'm different from these guys because I'm not career law enforcement. I spent most of my career as a civilian in the business world. I know how to run businesses. I ran the police department, City of Grantville. I'm not sure how long it has been for these guys to have really worked the streets. Our drug problems are terrible here. I personally, within the last 6 years, have worked too many drug overdoses and drug-induced suicides. That is my driving factor to want to clean this county up. I appreciate it again, Doug Jordan.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Wood, your opening statement, please, sir.
My name's Lenn Wood, and I Appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk to each and every one of you. I started out policing at Noonan Police Department in 1978. I stayed with Noonan Police Department for 17 years. I went from patrolman to desk sergeant to detective sergeant. When I left the city, I went to Coweta County Sheriff's Office in 1995, and I've been there ever since. I started out as an investigator. I went into the school resource program, and I helped develop it for the county here, and I really enjoyed that. That's why I consider it to be my baby. I love the schools. I love the kids, and I think that's where we'll make the biggest difference in everything we do, is building that connection, that rapport with the kids, and giving them an alternative to the drugs and gangs. I consider myself to be kid-oriented. I raised both my boys here. My wife and I have been married for 39 years. Both my boys and all four of us graduated from Noonan High. It's been around a little while. And they have both, one of my boys is actually involved in Coweta County law enforcement now. One of mine is a supervisor at a local industry here, and I'm very proud of both of them. I've been involved in church and in Little League Baseball and soccer and basketball and football and coaching and all those, and been on the board at the Noonan Pony League. I also coached the BB gun team on the 4-H team for several years. And I was proud, we went to nationals several years coaching them, and that was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed working with the girls. The girls usually outshot the boys, so it was good. But I've enjoyed it. I've lived in Coweta all my life, and I'm proud to be a Coweta County resident. But I'm the sheriff now, and I hope to remain sheriff. With your vote, vote Lenn Wood, June 18th. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate those statements from each of you. We're going to go on with our questions. And again, I'd remind you, we're going to keep it to right at 1-minute answers for our questions, and then an opportunity for rebuttal after each. Our first question is really kind of, our first couple of questions in a sense, are kind of follow-ups to your opening statements. All of you referenced your work and life experience in your openings. Well, take a minute and kind of expand on that, if you will. Tell us how your life's experience, and I know y'all all addressed this, but I'm thinking particularly of your law enforcement experience here, will likely guide your decision-making as Coweta County Sheriff. Mr. Collins, we'll start with you first.
Well, Lucky, one thing I've been out of law enforcement for just a few years, and it's kind of given me a different perspective of law enforcement and what law enforcement should be. Law enforcement, of course, is when we talk about going after the criminals, but I kind of see it more of the basics, the public service that we do, providing a service to the citizens, the taxpayers. I've had the opportunity to kind of see where that needs to go. I believe we need to change our perspective and become more part of the community. You can call it community policing or whatever you may like it, but I believe there's a need in this community to kind of step up the game and for our deputies, administration, to be a part of the community, and that's my goal.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, same question.
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Certainly, I'm just asking, you referenced your work and life experience in your opening, but take a minute and expand on that. Tell us how your life's work experience, particularly your law enforcement experience, will likely to guide your decision-making as Coweta County Sheriff.
Well, as I said, when I re-entered law enforcement, because they'll all will agree, is once you're in law enforcement, you're always in it. We're police officers all together. We're brothers in arms. We're here for that one sheriff's office. When I got back into policing, I realized how bad our problems are in Coweta County, our drug problems. Our crime is driven, it's me, by drugs. Gangs and drugs, we all mentioned that. If we don't get tough in this county now, we're gonna lose. It's all over America. It's coming to us. We're here. We're just outside Atlanta. We got 85 running right through our town. We've got problems, and we got to get tough. I was asked to run because they said they wanted somebody new and tough. Well, I'm not new. I've been here 36 years, but I can promise you I'm tough.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood.
I think my experience is that I've been committed to Coweta County. I've been policing here since '78. I have been involved in seeing the Coweta County, Noonan and Coweta County grow to where we are today. I can remember when I first started, we might get one call a week. So now we're running from call to call, and we don't really have a whole lot of time to do anything. But the biggest thing that I've done since I've taken over the office in March 1st is we are becoming more community oriented. We started a program called the Ownership Program at Coweta County, where a patrolman is assigned to an area for the duration, and he takes ownership of that area. If he sees a problem in that area, he brings us a solution, and we work with him to enact that solution. And that's where I think I'll be able to have a jump on the others and changing Coweta County and growing with Coweta.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway.
Sure, thank you for the question. I prepared my entire life for a time such as this, through education, through formal education, through networking throughout the state. I hold all kinds of network around the state that uniquely sets me apart to get ahead of the growth, to get ahead of the gang issue that's going on here in this county. For us to be going from call to call to call means that we haven't properly planned to grow the sheriff's office essentially over time to have more deputies hired on. I know that's a process, but it's a process that I'm prepared to take head on and look with our county commission to see our forecast, to see what we can do. We use intelligence-led policing, data-led policing. To where the crimes are occurring, we apply resources to cool those hot spots all over the county, not by zone assignments. It's not by call volume alone that you develop those resources and you apply those resources.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins, rebuttal to anything you've heard?
I believe, I'm hearing this grim picture of crime everywhere. I know we have crime, but I don't see it as a grim issue. We've got to get more visible. We've got to have a larger presence. Some of the ideas I have is to help develop the community to be a part of that. So I'm very proud of this community.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, rebuttal?
I agree with Mr. Collins and also Mr. Callahan. I believe we're shorthanded. There's no fault of the present administration. We need to get to where we're more proactive than reactive. That would be my game. I agree with what they say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
The problem with manpower is, of course, tax money and what's available. We have been, since March 1st, I have met with county administration on 3 different occasions already, preparing for the budget for this coming year. And that's one big thing we've been talking about is manpower. We are trying to address it, and we hope that the county commission will be able to find the funds.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal?
There's one way to generate revenue right now that's not even being looked at. The sheriff's office currently gives reports away for free, incident reports and crash reports. This is the only agency that I know of, in my experience in Metro Atlanta, that does that. We generate $5 per report. That generates over $200,000 in revenues for us a year.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Go on to our next question. Talk a little bit about the institution of the sheriff's office himself and how you might see that as the incoming sheriff. So our first one is, and Mr. Jordan, we're going to go to you first on this. What do you think the current strengths of the Coweta County Sheriff's Office are currently, and what are some changes you might like to see in the short term if elected as sheriff?
Well, as Mr. Wood pointed out, we're shorthanded. Now, he says he goes to the Coweta Council and they talk budgets, which is all fine and dandy. I want the citizens to know, if they're not giving me the manpower, I'm not afraid to tell the citizens why. It's protecting them. So that's a serious issue right there. I'm not afraid to speak out. I don't care who I offend. As long as we're keeping our county safe, that's what it's about. I'll be vocal in the papers. I'll be telling the voter why I can't have 20 officers and only get 2. That's just me.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
As I said, we're already addressing several of the areas that we do fall short. The strengths of our office right now are the men that work there, men and women. They do an outstanding job for what we have to work with, and they take pride in what they do, and I'm very proud of each and every one of them. They do an outstanding job. We are shorthanded. We could use a whole lot more people. But to be able to keep the crime rate as low as we have with the manpower that we do have, all the praise goes to them. They're the ones out there doing the job. And that's where I think that's the biggest strength we have. They take pride in Coweta County. What I'd like to see short term is working on getting more manpower, working on different issues to raise morale and keep morale up. We're doing real well right now at the sheriff's office, and people are coming to work for us, and we're fixing to be full staff in patrol for the first time since I've been there shortly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway?
Absolutely. The sheriff's office here in Coweta County, actually being a third party living here and being a law enforcement executive myself, I have noticed the cameras in the cars. I have noticed the printers in the cars, things like that. They have been with technology. I'll give them absolute credit for that. And the deputy sheriffs here are some of the best in the state. The uniqueness that I can bring is I can bring a clean slate into the sheriff's office. We can advance our technologies, our drone programs. I'd like to see a couple of motorcycles, two to four, given time over the future, to patrol the area, to act as community policing, to act as neighborhood patrols, but also traffic enforcement. Traffic crashes in this county are at an all-time high with fatalities and serious injuries. I want to see those by data drop down and to have a safer roadways for our citizens here in the county.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins?
Well, I think we all agree our dedicated employees are the heart of the department. What I don't agree with is the fact is that we have so many open positions that are not filled. There's no way that we can get to higher capacity if we can't fill the positions we have. What I've heard in the past few weeks is the morale is the worst it's ever been. I believe there's time for change. I believe that I have the ability to improve the morale, to improve retention, recruitment. We have a great community. Our benefits are great, good. Our starting salaries are high for surrounding territories. Our people are being overworked for what they're doing. We've got to get some relief in there. We have open positions that can be filled. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, rebuttal to anything? All right. Mr. Wood or Mr. Callaway?
The only rebuttal I would have would be that the morale at our office is high. You can walk through there and you can feel it. There are issues that we've had to address since I've been sheriff, but that comes with being sheriff, and you're always going to have those issues. And so we handle them quickly now, and we take care of something as soon as we see it.
Very good. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal?
No.
Or Mr. Collins?
Very much so.
No.
Again, the word that I'm getting from these deputies, they're fearful. The morale, I've never heard of it before being this bad in Coweta County. As soon as Mike Yeager left, I believe the bottom has fallen. I'm shocked, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, back to you, rebuttal.
Yes, I have to agree, Mr. Collins. I have friends on the sheriff's department. Sheriff Yeager worked with me as far as getting people hired. I understand the morale is at an all-time low, and that's not a good thing. That needs to be worked on. We need to bring that back. That's all I have to say.
We'll move on to our next question. If that question was about a short term, the strengths of the department, and the short term, what you'd like to see, kind of think of long term now. And I suppose what I mean by long term might be 5 to 10 years. What long term challenges do you see for the sheriff's office going into the future? Just what are the biggest things that would be on your radar 5 to 10 years out as sheriff? Mr. Wood, we'll go with you first.
The biggest thing we've already started discussing was the jail expansion. because as population continues to grow, we have 408 beds in our jail as it stands right now. The population continues to grow, and we're at 140, 150,000. Within the next 5 years, it's talking about being upwards of right at 200,000. So we're going to have to expand the jail. And we've been in discussions with the county about how we're going to pay for that, because we have to start planning for that now. That's not something you can do overnight. That's not anything you can do within a year. And the last time we had to build a jail was under federal court order, and they built it within 12 months. And we're having to pay for that now as the building gets older. But we're discussing the expansion of the jail and manpower.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, same question.
Sure. You have to have a 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan as we grow in the community. Listen, this is a great place to be. I live here. I moved here. I chose to be here. We have high home values. We have a great economy down here. It's only a matter of time before this secret that's south of Fulton County gets noticed, and we're inundated with new developments. So we have to have smart growth. As smart growth goes along, that goes with jail expansion, but it also goes with the decentralization of the sheriff's office itself. It goes with actual precincts that are functioning, working precincts throughout the county where deputies do not go to Grease and Trail for roll call. They go to their respective precincts all over Coweta County for shorter, faster response times and better service delivery for our citizens.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins, same question.
I guess it's almost been 10 years ago as a county commissioner, we purchased the additional land surrounding the jail for the purpose of expansion. The jail, yes, must be on the radar. It must become a topic very soon. A new facility would probably minimum $60 million to $80 million for a new building. That would be a terrible burden if it's not planned correctly. But I would agree, as this county grows, congestion, getting our deputies out into the precincts that we've built and actually use them for those purposes would be a great start to be able to get our deputies to quicker response times to our needs.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
We're all on the same page for that. You know, 5 or 10 years, we do need a big jail, but listen to ourselves. We're wanting to put more people in jail. If we get tough on crime now, you know, we won't be putting people in jail because they won't be here. They'll leave our county. We have to grow. The county's growing. Mr. Woods is right. We're pushing 200,000 people and growing constantly. If you don't go on the interstate to Atlanta, you don't see it. I drive it every day. We have to be proactive. We have to plan ahead. As sheriff, I'll put a think group together. We'll plan the sheriff's department out. We have to grow the sheriff's department. We have to have those facilities, but it's unfortunate. We have to get tough on crime. That's all there is to it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood, rebuttal?
The manpower issue will always be there, because once we get enough to handle what we have, we'll be behind still. So we are constantly in negotiations about the manpower. We can take it to the newspaper and to the media, social media, as much as we want, but if the tax money is not there, we're not going to be able to get it. So we have to make sure we use manpower where it best suits and is best for the county to remain safe. And that's where we need to concentrate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal?
Real quick rebuttal. I'm a student of Six Sigma, which is process elimination. When there's waste in processes, you remove those and you actually find value in items, such as I mentioned before, the incident reports and the crash reports. $200,000 alone would easily hire 2 additional deputy sheriffs for patrol. The actual cost for a police officer or deputy sheriff for patrol is close to $100 an hour. When you factor in fuel, vacation, sick time, retirement benefits, the car itself, equipment, hourly salary, training, everything, totality, you're looking at a very expensive resource.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins, rebuttal?
Again, we have open positions that are not filled. But part of my plan is to streamline, put more deputies on the road, utilizing the current budget One way of doing that, historically, this department has been top-heavy in administration. I plan to have 2 competent, highly qualified administrators under me. I will eliminate several positions and put those positions and funding on the roads.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
I have no further.
Okay. Let me go on. You've talked about some of those issues, short-term and long-term. I guess you could take this as a long-term, but ask about specialized units. Would you say, and I'm going to start Mr. Callaway on this question, would you foresee establishing or expanding any specialized units, say a DUI task force or intensified traffic unit or what have you?
Question.
Yes, sir.
And the answer is 100% absolutely. Day one, CAGE will be formed. CAGE is Coweta Anti-Gang Enforcement. It will be a full-time, multifunctional enforcement team that will include canine, uniform patrol officers, detectives, crime analysts to get at the very engine, like I said before, that is driving our crime rates. Property crimes in general. When you have entering autos, they're looking for pistols and rifles inside cars that they can steal. When you have violent crime, a lot of times it's perpetrated by drug gangs and gangs in general. Your drug sales are being committed by gangs. So of course, it makes sense to have a gang unit. Obviously, motor units, traffic enforcement, to get those crashes down. It's not about revenue generation. Traffic enforcement is specifically about changing behavior of the motorists on the roadways to make our roadways safer.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins.
Very much so. Specialized units, I think we've got some things that we're doing that are not necessarily needed. Again, put more deputies on the roads in a uniformity matter. I don't know how many cars we have out there that are all different color schemes. One of the ideas I have is every car in the future will be white. It will be identified as a patrol car, the light bar, distinct lettering. You'll know that it is a Coweta County Sheriff's deputy. Currently, I drive to LaGrange 2 or 3 times a week now, and the number of deputies that I'm actually seeing working the interstate south of Moreland, between Moreland and Grantville, trying to do drug interdiction. In the same time, you can see 3 or 4 state troopers doing the same thing. But I cannot understand why we're trying to do drug interdiction, especially in the southbound lanes, of traffic coming down Coweta County, of some drug dealer coming from from Atlanta through Noonan to somewhere else. And we're trying to stop these guys, and we're spending 3 or 4 deputies every day, to me, wasting taxpayer dollars, and they should be back on the streets of Coweta County.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
We all agree we need to expand. We need to be working the traffic. We've had far too many fatalities on our interstates, on our roadways. Ask any parent who's lost their kids in a car accident not too long ago, twin boys, I think. We need visibility out there. We all agree you're shorthanded. More visibility is crime prevention just being there. I agree with Mr. Callahan. Motors. I started my career on a motorcycle. We need motors to work traffic. That was going to be one of my ideas. I think he stole it from me. Visibility is a trick. Enforcement. I believe Coweta had a great traffic division at one time. I heard they did away with it. I'm not sure why. Maybe manpower. I would expand greatly the drug task force. We've got drugs in our schools, in our neighborhoods. We need to get it stopped.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood.
There's definitely a need for the traffic unit, and we have already been in discussion I have with our patrol commander about how we might be able to do that. He's trying right now to designate 1 or 2 deputies on a shift to work traffic and work traffic accidents whenever they're available, if there's not that many calls for them to respond to start out. And this gives us an idea of who's really interested in it. The idea about manpower is putting people who want to do that job into those positions because they are the ones that will do the best job because they like it. And so that's the idea of starting it out like we're doing right now as 1 or 2 from a shift and letting them do it when they can. And also the same thing with the drug interdiction. Those officers are on a shift, but they're working it when they can.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
Mr. Collins?
We underutilize the Georgia State Patrol. I spent 20 years living as a trooper, working this community. At one time, we had 22 troopers assigned to the post 24 in Newnan. I think now we're lucky if we've got 9. That is also a point of utilizing them, and that's my goal, is to get them back and get them back full staffed. But yes, we need some specialized units. I will enforce a DUI task force, a traffic unit, and other special units.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, rebuttal? Or
No.
Mr. Wood, rebuttal? We'll go on to our next question. Ask you, this has come up a couple times, but ask you about another specialized program. The Coweta County Sheriff's Office, along with the City of Newnan Police Department and the City of Grantville, committed here recently, basically last year, to fully expand the SRO program in our schools so that there's a dedicated uniformed officer in every one of the Coweta County schools. How do you see the Sheriff's Office's current commitment to schools through that expansion of the School Resource Officer program? And I believe we start with Mr. Collins on this one.
Thank you. Yes, I just actually had this kind of discussion. I will add at least 2 full-time investigators to the SRO program. My understanding is that a lot of the program after hours, things are discovered. My conversation with the school administration has been that there may be a need for that. One of the things I want to do with the SRO program, when I take my children to school, I have noticed so many times that either a deputy or now live in the city, the SRO arriving basically at the same time that I'm arriving with my kids. I will have our SROs park in front of the school. They will be out during departure, pickup, drop off, so that they can be visible. I will require every deputy in the department to routinely, randomly visit schools. Part of my program, we will walk in the door, visit randomly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
It's, the SR program is very important. We do need to expand it. Until we get in there and see how it's operating and how we can expand it, we'll hire or ask volunteers. I had an occasion to meet with a gentleman in Arizona, Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Me and my wife, we talked about that. She brought it up. He had volunteers come into the schools, and some of the rebuttal was, well, they're not certified. So he certified them. He got them through the academy, got them certified. These were volunteers. Well, they're not armed. Yeah, he armed them. So he had plenty of SOR people in the schools. I'm not saying we'll do that in Coweta, but it's something to think about, because what's gone on in our country is terrible in the past, and we need to stay on top of that, protect our kids.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood.
As I said, the SRO program that the Coweta County Sheriff's Office does is probably one of the best in the state. We have, from the get-go, when we first started, we cross-trained all our SROs. They're not patrolmen, they're investigators. They are trained to do investigations. Any crime that happens at the school, they investigate it and they prosecute it. That saved us a lot about pulling our criminal investigators off the road. One of the biggest things we stress to our SROs, though, is that we do not want to make criminals out of kids. Some of the things they do, while yes, it might be against the law, it's also because they're a kid. And we need to recognize that and try to work with them in those situations. I love the kids. I think that the SRO program here is very good. I was president of the Georgia Association of SROs for several years, and that was one of the things we stressed, that we needed to put good officers in the schools.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway.
Yes, again, I'm uniquely situated for this position because I was a school resource officer myself for about 7 years. I worked in the schools. I'm an actual first responder to a school shooting. Heritage High School in 1999, I responded to a school that had kids that were shot, and we pulled those kids out of that school. So I have that experience. Active shooter training is imperative. Gang training for all of our SROs. There's a lot of SROs that are not versed on gang identification to get those kids out of the schools. I'm not for making kids criminals, but there are some kids that need to be removed from that setting and put somewhere else. That's just the fact of the matter. Yes, we do need to have the SRO program, but I'm also an advocate of the Guardian program. The Guardian program is utilizing retired military personnel in Coweta County that are vetted psychologically for our program that could act as guardians in our schools. I'm also an advocate of a reserve deputy sheriff program. There are a lot of retired certified deputy sheriffs and police officers in this county that could be brought back on, not full duty, but reserve duty to supplement our football games and sporting events throughout the county.
Thank you, sir. We started with you, Mr. Collins. Let me ask you a rebuttal.
Yes. My children are 6 and 8, kindergarten, 3rd grade. I promise you the safest schools because my children are going to be there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan, rebuttal.
I'd like to add that when I was an investigator, I had an occasion I had to go to Noonan High School because we had a drug overdose. I talked to the SOR officer, great guy. He was telling me some terrible stories. We all love kids. We don't want to hurt the kids, but we got to get the bad ones out. There was occasion, there was a young gentleman with a big bag of marijuana caught in school. He was expelled one day and came back the next. That can't happen. That's got to stop.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood, rebuttal.
The idea that I know the school and how they handle their discipline, and if there's a big bag of marijuana caught at a student, he goes before a review board before he comes back to school, and they don't just let them back in school when they're charged. So that's one thing I do know. I've been involved with the school and the school safety program forever, and I still go to all the school safety meetings. So we discuss that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal.
Real quick, a school does not want to become a Title I school. Under No Child Left Behind, if it's a chronically unsafe school based on data that's given to that school and through crime reporting, so there is a benefit, not a benefit really, but a motivation for some crimes not to be specifically reported the correct way through UCR reporting the proper way it's supposed to be done. Because if a school is chronically unsafe, the parent has the right at that point to remove that child and put them in any other school in the school system. So it's those things we have to work closely with our administrators. It's okay to give us this information so we can not try to sweep crime or any information under the rug.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to our next question. Talk a little bit, we've talked about employees, but let me just ask you in general about retaining employees. I mean, I know we've talked about pay, and so I don't just mean pay with this when I mention this. We're going to go with Mr. Jordan first. What would you do, either in terms of employee pay, if possible, or other things, to make sure that the Coweta County Sheriff's Office is operating at and is attractive to officers at the same level of agencies of similar size and demographics? In other words, what would your retention plan be to try to keep your best employees here in Coweta County?
Good question. And very first, we've got to fix the morale problem. I don't know. I'd have to get in there. I'd have to find out. I'd interview all the superior officers on supervision. I would interview every deputy on the force. I would find out what our problems are, and then we'd address that. Most of our deputies are young, got young families. I personally feel about the kids. I want to figure a way to have some child care taken care of for them, some vouchers, a voucher system, all about that. That would help. Increasing the pay of any way, but the biggest thing is the morale. If they like working there, they're going to stay. That's all I think. Is the pay low? It's low across the board all over the state. Can we look at it and adjust it? Again, that would be up to the taxpayer, the county commissioners. We would address that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
The biggest thing we have found through the studies and everything else that we've looked at, retention all comes back to empowering your people. If they feel like they're being appreciated and they're being used to their fullest capacity, they don't tend to leave, no matter what the pay is and no matter what the benefits are. That all plays part in it, especially if they have families. But as long as your pay is suitable, if they feel empowered, and that's what we're doing with the ownership program, that's what we're doing with any area that we run across. We started a program with the E-Shift, which is the K-9 units and specialized unit. They ride around to different areas and they find these rough areas. And when they find them, they come up with a plan and we give them the manpower they need to work it. We have businesses calling us down at Exit 41, thanking us for what we've done down there. I think that's where we stay involved with the community.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway?
Well, it's the age-old saying, employees do not quit organizations, employees quit managers. And that's true. So over time, my goal would be is the employee first. Myself, throughout my career, I've had to work side job after side job to make ends meet. But as I rose to the ranks, I gave up side jobs so where younger officers could take those jobs. I think leadership by example is a big deal. And when the officers see that I'm giving up stuff for them, that I'm being sacrificial for them, I think that's important. I would look for ways for tuition reimbursement for formal education, if we could work through that through the county commission. That would be definitely a goal of mine. Also, too, employee betterment services, different programs for the employees, gym memberships, things like that, that they could have benefits for health and wellness in their careers and have that fulfillment of doing those careers.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins?
I currently work for one of the largest companies in the world, and part of my job is to hire, train, retain employees. We have some of our employees have been there, gosh, I would say 50% or more have been there their entire career. I'm talking 10 to 20 year tenure. They're there for a reason because they are part of this community. I'm not going to lead from inside the building. I'm going to be out and about. One of the things you've got to do is invest into your associates, make them a part of the program. They've got to feel a part of the program. They're part of this community. What we've got to do now is, again, I like the word empower, but they already are empowered. My goal will be to look after them, and if I do that for them, they'll make my job easier. Again, I have identified 2 highly qualified people who are qualified to be sheriff themselves, who are both born and raised residents of this community who are going to help me. I guarantee you I can make some improvements.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Jordan, any rebuttal?
Just back to the morale. We need to do whatever's necessary. Hire more. That's probably a big morale builder. They're not working themselves to death, but we'll do whatever's necessary to get our morale back up.
Thank you, sir.
Community policing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood, rebuttal?
We need to empower our guys and let them know that we're going to back them in doing their jobs, and that keeps them here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal?
Quick rebuttal. I've made it my point in my career, especially as chief of police, to get out in front of situations, to be transparent about everything that goes on, to change the narrative that's going on here in the United States of America that's an incorrect, false narrative about us in law enforcement. I'm an advocate to try to change that narrative. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going no matter what to get that narrative where it should be, to tell the truth.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins, rebuttal?
Again, I keep hearing about how we already are looking after our employees, and that's the exact opposite of what I'm hearing. Our deputies deserve more of what they're getting now. Honestly, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Going to move on to our next question. I believe, Mr. Wood, you're going to be starting on this one. There's a trend in some law enforcement agencies to allow more comfortable uniform options, like perhaps, load-bearing external vests versus duty belts and that sort of thing, or allowing facial hair perhaps. Could you foresee any changes in uniform Coweta County deputies' appearance in the office?
We have been in discussion already about uniform changes for the job that you're doing. Patrol, because their first use of force in any continuum would be that the uniform, the presence of the uniform when he steps out of the car is what gets people's attention and decides how they're going to be treated or how they're not going to be treated. It's that respect. If you dress the part, you'll feel the part and you'll do the part. So as far as our patrol goes, we're looking at more comfortable uniforms, but I don't see our uniform as it stands right now changing. The K-9 uniform, we are changing them back to a more feasible uniform because they do work the K-9s. We are looking at changing some of the other uniforms in some of the schools that they're inside most of the time, so we can look at slacks and a golf shirt maybe, something less threatening.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway.
Again, I'm a trailblazer in the industry in Metro Atlanta. We have had tattoos forever, and beards are cool. We don't mind those. They're people. They're out in the community. It's ridiculous to have an officer wear long sleeve shirts out here in a tie just because the calendar date says so. They should be able to wear short sleeves if it's hot, and coats if they're cold, and long sleeves if they're cold. We currently wear outer vests. They're load-bearing vests to get that weight off of their hips and off their back. I've had back surgery myself. I'm a guy that's on the street all the time. I'm out there with the guys, and it's what they're the ones doing the job. I go to work every day wearing a uniform. I wear a vest with my uniform. I also have an outer carrier that I wear. It's very, very, very comfortable, and it still looks professional. It still commands respect, but it's about what's best practices and what's really the forefront for law enforcement, and that's where I'm uniquely situated because I'm there now.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins.
Well, I spent 20 years in a uniform. I was a trooper for 20 years, and I've always believed a well-dressed, smart-looking officer gets immediate command respect just by looking at them. They look the part, they act the part, they will get that. I'm a little old school. I do believe in a well-dressed uniform, clean-cut uniform. I don't necessarily mind some tattoos as long as it's tastefully, but I do have some issues with that. Again, I wore a uniform and a duty belt for 20 years. I have back problems because of that. I will make some changes to our uniform that is for all. We will be uniformed across the board. We will all wear the same uniform, but it will be practical for every person, K-9, patrol. We attend court, we will look the part. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
Yes, sir. I think it cannot be uniform across the board. Each department that the officer's in demands a different uniform. Law enforcement does quite different work than you go to work at the store or at the bank or whatever, right? I agree, Mr. Collins, you have to look professional. If you get out of that car, you look professional, you are professional. The K-9 people, yes, they have to have tactical uniforms. They're running through the woods. It's all what squad they're working. It's a morale builder to go to the deputies and give them an option, give them a few choices, as long as it's fits the bill. That's the way I do it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood, in rebuttal?
As far as tattoos and beards, I personally don't think a beard looks good with a uniform. Mustache is fine. Tattoos doesn't bother me. Years ago, it was just a big no-no. No one in short sleeves. They were required to wear long sleeves all the time if they had tats on their arms, whatever. That's accepted today, So I think that way of thinking is gone. We lost out on some good officers back in the day because of tattoos. So I don't think we rate our officers on tattoos anymore.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal.
Real quick rebuttal,
Yes, sir.
especially on the school resource officers, putting them in khakis and a polo, as long as they have their vest that they wear underneath, because we don't want to see those officers become lackadaisical in their duties day in and day out. I had a friend of mine that was shot and killed in line of duty because his vest was in the office and he didn't take it with him. So definitely, those are critical issues that we don't need to be lazy about and say, well, you don't have to wear your vest anymore. That's one of the most important things is deputy safety.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins.
Well, again, I believe we can all have the practical uniform and look alike in uniformity. When you arrive, you will know that we are a Coweta County deputy, patrol car and uniform. I don't care if it's K-9, patrol, in that nature. There is a uniform I already have pictured in my head, what it's going to look like and what it is. As a trooper, my uniform was wool. Summer, winter, I probably got more in trouble for getting out of the car and not wearing my hat when I was chasing somebody, which I always thought was my last care in the world, whether I'm wearing my big hat or not. But uniformity will be a top priority for me.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, rebuttal.
I'd like to add, I would lead by example, but I have nothing against mustaches and beards, in case you hadn't noticed. As long as they were within taste, there'd be guidelines. I have tattoos. It's the generation, it's the time, but all about looking professional.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to our next question. Mr. Callaway, we're starting with you on this. Our county is diverse, with people from many racial and ethnic and religious, geographic and other backgrounds. What steps do you believe the sheriff's office should take to make sure the department's personnel and leadership reflect our pluralism and work most effectively with all citizens? Keep in mind, that's not a comment on some sort of deficiency of the department now. I'm just saying, how do you see that moving forward?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question. I'm the chief of police for the city of Morrow in Clayton County. We are diverse. Our population, our department matches what our population looks like. We have Laotian officers. I've got Vietnamese officers. I've got females. I've got African Americans and white. I believe it's wonderful to foster that sense of diversity within that agency because there are cultural differences. You have to train those young deputies that might not understand how to respond to a specific call involving a certain culture, because they are culturally sensitive to issues where some issues you might want to address this person before you address this person. And that's just the way it is when you separate them, like in a situation of a domestic situation. But where I work currently, I foster in a wonderful area of diversity, and I believe that's going to be the case here in Coweta County as we grow, especially with industry such as Kia, as Yamaha is here. We see an influx in the county, and I think that's a good thing. And I think I'm well suited to handle it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins.
Very much. As this community prospers and gets larger and we invite more industry here, like we mentioned, Kia, Yamaha, even our Hispanic population, we have got to develop a program within the community to be able to address those different types of culture. We've got to get bilingual in Spanish, Korean. It's important, and it will take some time to develop that. I still need to master the English language myself, but we do have to develop and evolve our community, our department, to address those issues, because we're going to continue to grow, and I want to make sure that we grow in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
I agree. We have to be diverse, hands down. As Mr. Woods mentioned, though, you're limited to what you get. You can't weed them out just because they're not right color or race. But we have to make our environment to where you're attracted to those people coming to your department. It's all about morale. The word gets out. You start drawing other officers from other counties in. I want to go to work for Coweta. The word gets out. And yes, the department needs to be diverse, no doubt.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
That's one of the, probably the best questions you've asked tonight. We do need to get more diverse in our hiring. And we are doing recruitment now. We recently lost one of the guys that was doing a lot of recruiting for us who moved to Florida. But he was doing a real good job, and he was going to all the local colleges when they were having their career days and recruiting from that. We have recruited different cultures, different ethnicities, different races. And most of them, because they're not certified, go to work in our jail. And then they start working in the jail and they liking it so much, they stay in the jail. So they don't really want to come out on the road when patrol has openings. And we try to promote from within because that helps morale in a lot of ways. But we are looking into that and seeing where we need to grow. My mother was Japanese, so I grew up with maybe only 3 Japanese people that lived in the whole county. And I saw the differences in how you were treated, and we don't want to make sure that doesn't happen at our office.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway, rebuttal?
Well, like I said before, I'm already doing that now. I'm a chief in a diverse department. I know how to hire diversity. I know how to maintain that diversity and keep that diversity.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins? All right. Mr. Jordan, rebuttal?
No further.
All right. Mr. Collins, I believe you're going to get this one first. And we're getting, just so you know, you may be relieved, we're getting closer to the end of our forum, and I appreciate y'all bearing up under this. And as we get closer, I'd like to kind of to go back to some of your personal beliefs and what you bring to the office and that sort of thing. And if you don't mind, let me just ask this tough one first of everybody. And it's tough, not because the question's tough, but because I know you're all thinking about this. You all have extensive experience in law enforcement. Every one of you do. But no matter what you've done in the past, Coweta County Sheriff's Office is a large and complex organization, hundreds of employees, patrol, criminal investigations, jail, court services, support service divisions, just a lot of moving parts and a lot of crucial services that all Coweta County citizens rely on, and which you as sheriff would have complete responsibility. How are you preparing to assume that responsibility? I mean, whether it be in terms of training or planning or even self-assessment and trying to get your mind around it, how are you preparing to take on that responsibility? Mr. Collins.
Yeah, that's a pretty large question.
It is, and I apologize for it, but I know it's got to be something that's on your mind too, probably.
Well, I believe I've been part of this community for a long time. And I think that helped prepare me. I think I've been saying since I was 12, I knew what I wanted to do. Luckily, there was a guy in there for 26 years that's kind of prevented me to get to this next step. So I'm kind of happy to get the opportunity to try. But again, preparing myself for this, we've been kind of talking about this for the past 2 years and where we're getting here. So we're getting really close. I mean, what, 6 weeks maybe away from the actual election. So I've kind of been preparing myself for a long time, but being a part of this community, I think I gained a lot of experience being a commissioner, hearing people, listening to people, hearing what their needs are and what their desire is. There's not a person in this room who does not want the best for this community. I plan to work with every single person I can to make this a better community, to make this a better department, to make me a better person. And I just, honestly, I think we're the best county in this state. And I'm proud of us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
We want to make it the best county in the state. And we've all thought of this, Mr. Wood's already there, but I would go to each department. I'd interview all the command staff. Again, I mentioned that early on. We'd find out what's going on. I would learn each department through that command staff, and then I'd interview all the deputies underneath. We'd tweak it. This is what we do in industry. Businesses survive only by operating correctly, efficiently. So we'd have to look at all that. But I'm not in that environment, but I would be in there and I would learn from the command staff, and And I'd figure out what the problems are, we'd fix them, and continue on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
I believe I started 41 years ago preparing for this. I didn't think about running for sheriff 41 years ago, but because I've been able to move up through the ranks for the last 41 years at the police department and at the sheriff's office. I've had, as a commander, and when I was moved to the jail, I went back in the jail and I booked several inmates, so I saw how they did the booking. I went to the pods and I fed the inmates, and I did medical when we were dispensing medications. So I understood how it all worked. When I was in the SROs, I was an SRO for several years. When I was in the investigations, of course I was doing investigations in the city before I came there. I continued to grow. If you ever quit trying to get educated, then you quit growing. And I continually go to command staff training and learn more about the sheriff's office and how to operate every day. I'm doing it now, and I'm prepared for it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway?
Like I said before, I prepared my entire life for a time such as this. I have recognized post executive certification, recognized post management certification. I'm currently a chief of police in a metropolitan Atlanta Police Department. We've had success ever since I've been at the helm of that agency. No critical issues with employees, no real retention issues. We've actually increased our benefits and our pension plans under my tenure as chief of police. But I do want to say one thing. The size of an organization has nothing to do with the quality of a leader. A quality leader can lead any size organization. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins? Any rebuttals?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Wood? All right. We'll move on to our next question, which I believe, in the interest of time, is going to be our last question before we move on to closing comments. And Mr. Jordan, you're going to go first all this. But go back to your original statements. I remember every one of y'all would talk about the fact that you also live here, have family here, et cetera, in Coweta County. And so in a sense, I kind of want to ask a little bit about that. You're all running for sheriff, but you have personal roots and personal stakes in the community itself. And I know you're focused on the sheriff's office itself, as you should be. But give us a little bit of an idea. What is your vision for Coweta County? When you look, you think about Coweta County as your home 10, 20 years out. What's your vision for this community, for its prosperity and continued prosperity? Where do you think we should be headed? And how would the sheriff's office be a part of that, in your opinion? Mr. Jordan.
Our county needs to be the #1 county in the state to live, to bring industry down here and families. Only through law enforcement does that happen. You drive the crime down. Personally, that's what I want. I want Coweta to be the safest county in Georgia to live. You can raise your families here. Your elderly parents are safe when they go out. You achieve that through law enforcement.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood.
What I see the sheriff's office in 10 years from now, and what our role plays in the growth of Coweta County, is that we remain like we are in such that we are one of the safest counties around, and that we are a hidden gem down here. We have a great community. We have a lot of support from our community, and I could not be more proud to say I live in Coweta County because of that. And I continue to say that, and I hope that 10 years, 20 years from now, we can say the same thing, and that we want to live here and remain here because of that. We've grown, we're very diverse, but the biggest thing is that we are very diverse, but no one knows it because we get along so well. And that's what I want.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway.
Like I said earlier, I was born in Decatur, Georgia. My dad was battalion chief for the DeKalb County Fire Department. We lived in DeKalb County. We were driven out of DeKalb because of crime. We moved to Rockdale County, where I said I was a deputy sheriff for over a decade. We raised my family there for a little while, and then crime drove us from that area here. I don't want to see it happen here. I know what to look for. I see it. I know how to get ahead of it. the best thing about this county is it reminds me so much of what it was like me growing up in Rockdale, somewhat of a rural setting, but a metropolis to Atlanta that was growing positively. And then we saw to where we didn't have smart growth and we started building things in front of other things, and a lot of that got into the way. And as sheriff, not just for the law enforcement aspect of it, but from a planning zoning issue, I have experience with that to get ahead of those issues and to make my voice known to the commission on issues that do affect growth and quality growth.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins.
You know, running for sheriff in Coweta County, and I think of Coweta County, I don't think of crime. I think there's been an increase in the past couple of years. It's more attention to us now. But as a commissioner, I remember looking at comparing us to Cobb and Gwinnett economically, and we were equal. And again, this is my home, and I don't see this as gangs. I know we've got gangs, and gangs can be defined as 3 or 4 people doing an event. But I don't see that I don't want anybody to feel fearful. But I want the sheriff's office to be visible. I want us to be proactive. If we're needed, I want to be able to respond with the appropriate resources that we need. I like the good old, maybe having to get a call to get a cat out of a tree or something like that. You know, it's the hometown feel that I want to keep. That's what I want to work for. And I want our deputies to be a part of that and feel the need that the people can call on them for anything. But if we have high crime, we're going to respond as needed when needed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan, rebuttal?
Not a rebuttal, to just add, we all moved down here because it was a great place to move 36, pushing 40 years ago. We're growing tremendously. We have to stay ahead of that curve. Be visible, and community policing is what Mr. Collins talked about. That's old school. I'm old school. We'll get back to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wood, rebuttal? Mr. Callaway?
Just quickly. You know, I will not be a sheriff that buries his head in the sand, or a department. I worked for a sheriff's office that did bury their head in their sand, and then they had too much going on, they couldn't handle it. It took kids getting killed in the community to realize I open what's going on. I'm not trying to be fearful or scare anyone. I want to be transparent. Southtown here in Newnan just had cars stolen off their lot, just like we're seeing in Atlanta. Motorsports just had the front doors driven through with a stolen car, stuff stolen from them just last week. Same things that are happening in Metro Atlanta are happening here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins, rebuttal?
I look at one of our audience members, and he's been a deputy and probably as long as I have in Coweta County. I know where your heart is. I know what your desire is. I know what you will do when needed. I'm going to give you the tools that you need to make you a better deputy. That's my goal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to the end of our questions and very nearly to the end of our forums. We'll go now with 2-minute closing statements. And we began with Mr. Callaway and ended with Mr. Wood in an open statement, so we'll reverse that order if that's all right. Mr. Wood, I'll let you go first, if you wouldn't mind, for your 2-minute closing statement.
As we said at the beginning, my name is Lenn Wood, and I'm running for sheriff. I am the acting sheriff right now, and I continue to fill that position now and hopefully past June 18th. I have done the job. I was chief deputy for several years, and I've been the sheriff now for a couple of months. I probably have dealt with more in those last 2 months than most sheriffs do in their whole careers. I've proven myself, I feel like, and I believe that I can do the job and make this county remain a safe county and carry us into the future with the growth and keeping up with everything that we can come across and being way ahead of the crime that comes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
Again, Doug Jordan. I was investigator and chief of police of the city of Grantville. The voters are in a unique situation because this is a special election. We're all making campaign promises. I'm not a politician. I'm not pretty, you know, and I say it like it is. But the voter has the opportunity to elect one of us June 18th. And if we don't fulfill those promises, then they can elect somebody else in just less than a year. So I'm telling you, I may be the only candidate here, but I can promise you I'll fulfill everything I say. We'll make this a better county, a safer county for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins?
Probably the toughest question, I guess, is my closing statement. But status quo is what we've had for 26 years. The current administration, the current realm of what's going on in the sheriff's department, I don't think the average person knows. I truly believe that I can change and improve, expand, bring something new to the table, new ideas, using the same dedicated people that we've had for such a long time who have been the movers of this community, the peacekeepers of this community. All I've heard in the past few weeks is how unhappy most of the deputies are. Some of them are fearful. I think they're ready for a change. And I think what I can bring to the table is a few new ideas, not earth-shattering. It's not going to cost us a lot of money. I will improve morale, retention, and I will recruit and train the best deputies that we can have. I will invest in them to get them trained to the best. We've got deputies that should be at the FBI Academy, and that National Academy years ago. I will use the resources that I can get to send our deputies to the advanced schools, to college. I have an associate's degree in criminal justice, and I have a degree in leadership management. We need to develop our deputies. They have been so stagnant for years. The organization has been so top-heavy, stuck in the same place, the same ideas. We've got guys who are ready, able, and willing to step up to the next level. I will train. I won't train. They will train themselves to be a part of this community and to provide us with the best department this state has ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Callaway?
Thank you. Again, I'm humbled to be standing before everybody tonight. I do feel like I'm called to be here. I've felt this tug on my soul for several years, and it's been confirmed through other people throughout my circle. I do believe I'm uniquely situated. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm not bought and paid for, period. I'm from the outside. I'm an outsider that can do this job, that loves this county, that is a professional law enforcement officer. We will become state certified. I'm a state certified assessor. That doesn't mean that the policy is going to tell us exactly how to do every little thing. What it means is once we're state certified, our deductibles on our liability insurance to the county will go down. They've been consistently going up over the years for payouts for lawsuits. I will make sure that we rein that in. I will make sure that when a young deputy starts at the sheriff's office, he or she knows their career path. They're not going to get a position because of who they are. They're going to get a position based on their merits alone, period. Whatever the policy is stated, to be a sergeant or a lieutenant or a captain. Now, of course, I will appoint a chief deputy, but all other positions within the sheriff's office, they will be merit-based, and we will board from those with people from the outside that sit on those boards. That's the proper way to do things. We don't just promote people, put them in positions, and promote them for more pay. There's several lieutenants within the school resource officer program. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me why we have so many ranks within the same divisions. So those things are going to be looked at. I will be fair. I will be completely equitable and transparent. And again, my name is James Callaway. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to each of you, Mr. Callaway, Mr. Collins, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Wood. Want to say best of luck to all of you as y'all move forward toward this June 18th special election. But most of all, just want to say thank you very much for coming tonight. And above all, thank you very much for standing up for this important office, something that's so important to all of us here in Coweta County. I think y'all did a wonderful job, and I appreciate it. And with that, we'll end our forum. Again, thank you to the Central Educational Center. Thank you to Coweta Fayette EMC for sponsoring tonight. And of course, thank you to the Newnan Coweta Chamber of Commerce and the Times-Herald of Newnan for sponsoring this forum. Thank you and good night.